Hello and welcome to A Moment in Time with Nex. I am here coming to you live with a book review on this book, Feeding You Lies: How to Unravel the Food Industry's Playbook and Reclaim Your Health by Vani Hari. So if you don't know me, I'm Nex. I do a lot of live streaming, so sometimes this goes a little wild with reading comments in the live stream, but I do want to try to front load the video, so if you're watching this on the replay, we can kind of be talking about the book early on, and then if we get off on any tangents or other ideas, we can kind of save that for the second half of the stream. Or we can just go hang out on Twitch after this as well. But in the meantime, I want to talk about this book, Feeding You Lies. It's been a little bit of a long time coming because I have been working on my new podcast called Nex Talks, which you can find wherever you find your podcasts. And let me know what you think about it and what kind of subjects you'd like to hear me cover over there. This book did inspire one of my previous episodes where I'm talking about food because although I have been learning about this, I think this book might actually be from like 2009 or so, and I've been aware of a lot of the information from this book for over a decade because of things. I remember I used to watch Netflix documentaries like Forks Over Knives, Food Inc. There was a couple others where they kind of talk about Monsanto and like industrial agriculture and the value of eating organic, as well as potentially changing the way that we view nutrition and the types of foods that we consume, including animal products, which I'll be talking more about on a future book review that I'll be doing from a book that I'm reading called Eating Animals. So that's a little bit more specifically about eating meat and eating animal products. This book is more about general health and overall like lies that were fed by food industries. So I definitely suggest that you watch at least Food Inc. I think is a pretty valuable, interesting documentary. Hey, thank you for subbing. Oh, hey, it's Nikki. Hi. How are you? So that you can get more information, but you might also want to read this book. And if you follow her on social media, she posts a lot of useful information like recipes and kind of like blows the whistle on a lot of different companies and different ingredients so that you don't have to be constantly obsessing about this, you know, every waking minute. You can kind of follow her. Again, her name is Vani Hari. She used to be called the Food Babe, but I think she may have changed that branding since then. So just look for her name, Vani Hari, and she's the author of this book, Feeding You Lies, which I liked this book a lot. I would give it probably a good 4 stars. You know, it's not the most fun thing to read about all these like horrible, you know, lies that were kind of sold from big food industries, but it is super important and valuable to know, especially if you value your life or the life of your children or whoever it is that you're responsible for feeding, and to know what the reality is. So I think what she really is talking about here is like how a lot of these companies, they value money over many other things. And I kind of like came up with the 3 H's to kind of summarize this book and the types of things that she talks about without going into deep detail on each chapter and every little argument that she makes. Generally, the problem here is that these 3 H's are being neglected, sometimes completely. And they are health, humanity, and honesty. Honesty is an obvious one based on the title of the book, Feeding You Lies. You know, she's really focused on how false a lot of the information that we consume is about food and like, you know, the food pyramid and what's truly nutritional and valuable, and how so much of the narrative and like popular opinion on different foods and the ways that we eat is controlled by these large food companies and like major agricultural industry, and how a lot of the companies that are in charge of regulating them, a lot of these regulatory bodies or agencies in charge of regulating these industries are kind of cross-contaminated with a lot of conflict of interest, where someone will be sitting on the chair of the board, or they'll be like sitting on the board of some dairy company and also the regulatory agency in charge of regulating dairy. And it's kind of like kind of peeking behind the curtain and seeing the reality of the information you're consuming. So we can even, before we get into food, even just think about what is the source of your information. So doing as much independent research and really at least researching your sources of information. You might not want to do a full research project on every piece of information that comes into your awareness, but at least trust your sources. And sometimes you're still going to get deceived, but I think that's a big key here, is like honest information, like real, true, valuable, factual information. Even looking at studies, like who funded the study, really what's the quality of the study that was done here that's being cited to prove something. You know, was it like a legitimate study that is actually has like actual evidentiary weight, or is it really just kind of a what's the word I'm looking for here? It's like just lip service. It's just like a fake stats, you know? It's like you test 5 different people and you have these results. It's not really representative. It's not a good sample size, etc., etc. So bad stats, I guess. Hi, Art. Yeah, it's okay, Nikki. Good to see you. Hi, Willie. I'm good. How are you? Okay, so that's honesty and health. So health is probably the number one biggest focus of this book, and that is really like how these different foods actually harm our health and how they affect our health, the health of our guts, and therefore really the health of our entire bodies, and how our systems react to these different types of food that is kind of like, in some ways, kind of shoved down our throat. In some ways, right? Like in the sense that it's like addictive in nature, and the way that it's marketed and packaged is, you know, it preys upon psychological principles that make it difficult to resist or to avoid. And I think, at least for me as a millennial, I think my parents' generation, and maybe even theirs, but more so their generation, like the boomers, kind of, they didn't know, right? They just thought, okay, they didn't really know as much as we know now. The amount of information that we have access to in this day and age is unprecedented. I mean, it's overwhelming for many minds. So we have to remember this when we think of our parents and our grandparents and the quality of food that we're being fed and taught about and given as food, even though it's probably not even barely food. They didn't know any better, right? Like they didn't have access to this information. So it does seem like that kind of generation really kind of fed us, my generation, a lot of this kind of junk, like packaged, industrialized foods that really have no right being called food in many senses, in many cases. But we're not going to get into like specific instances of specific foods, because I don't want to be... Lately, I've been trying to I've been doing this most of my life, but it's like I want to focus on the positive. What can we do about it, right? We identify the problem, we acknowledge it, we know it's real, we know it's there, but we don't want to be overwhelmed by the size and the reality of the problem. We want to just be able to take action as much as we can and do the most that we can by having the biggest positive impact on the world and like the most minimal, least amount of negative impact on the world. And that's pretty much what most of us are out here trying to do as humans, I think, generally speaking. And if we want to talk about morals, that kind of is like most moral codes rely on that. We don't want to damage the world and leave some horrible wake behind us. So as we learn about these things, we realize the true nature of what's happening, then we can just make changes there. So the biggest takeaway for this, which there's more takeaways, but generally, especially if you have a short attention span, is like voting with your dollars. So only buying things that are in alignment with your values. And sometimes it's going to take that research. It's going to take that extra step to figure out, wait a second, what exactly is this and where is it coming from? And do I feel comfortable supporting that by buying into it and creating an economy around it? Because that's really powerful. You can sit on YouTube and make videos all day long about how important nutrition is, and then you can go right down the street to Taco Bell and use your money, which is more powerful than your opinions, your thoughts, your words. Words are extraordinarily powerful. They may rival the power of money, but generally, especially if you're talking about having like physical impact on the physical world, what you do with your money says, it's like the idea of action speaking louder than words. It's still a form of energy. So you can pay lip service to anything you want and say that you value these things and you care about these things, like the health of yourself and your family and your children, and then you can like feed your children Pizza Hut every night and try to figure out how to resolve that conflict of information. It's like cognitive dissonance when we think that we care, we want to live and we want to be healthy, we don't want to have pain, but then we like eat cereal for every meal of the day, sugar cereal, and it's like, I'm talking about how a lot of us were kind of indoctrinated into this. We ended up being just fed it like as children, and it became what we viewed as food, and we thought it was normal, and it became our normal thing, and we became addicted to it. So it's not so easy as just resolving these conflicts in your mind, but let this video and this book and this energy coming across just be a little bit of a challenge to really see, like, how are you voting for your food with your money? Like, how are you treating your body and the planet at large, which is the third H, humanity. They don't talk about this a ton in here, a little bit. They do talk about like cruelty towards animals, but the book I'm currently reading, Eating Animals, talks a lot more about this, and I'll have a lot more to say about that in the book review I do for that. So let's just talk more about like these industries. So I think a lot of us, I knew at least anyway, about Monsanto, GMO, these industries. I knew about like big fertilizer companies. But there were some different like things that she talked about that I thought were interesting that I didn't necessarily, I've thought about big dairy, big like meat before, but she talks also about big sugar being like its own industry, and how pervasive sugars and sweeteners and all different forms of that are in like all of our foods, even like our baby formula and like animal foods. And, it's just like, it's really important to be aware of. Big beverages, like big soda. I don't drink soda. I haven't drank soda in a long time. But yeah, a lot of people do. And it's like a really big industry that people are just drinking like sugar, so much high quantities of sugar all the time and just into their bodies. And I drink coffee with my sweet creamer, so I'm not perfect either. But it's an interesting thing to think about, these industries that are like just trying to sell you beverages outside of just water. It's like there's water companies, and then they're like, okay, let's come up with all these new energy drinks and all these new flavors, and really like it's just this, so much of this is just sold towards our tongues. It's all about like the taste of something as well as our neurologic connection to the potential to become addicted to it and to continue to have to buy it and fund this economy and this industry, because if no one bought it, they wouldn't do it. But when you can get someone addicted to something, it's much easier to keep them as a lifelong customer. Obviously, they don't have any incentive to make people so healthy that they die young. So, there's like, you can go so far with a conspiracy to say that it's like, they're trying to like make us sick and unhealthy. I don't think it's so much like intentionally creating this dark side as much as it's just like being so tunnel visioned on the profit margin that you like forget any other values, and the need for other values to be infused into our desires to have our businesses be profitable. And we can help as consumers of these products by buying the things that are in alignment with our values and refusing to buy the things that are not, because that's the only real way that a lot of us can really create change, is with our dollars and cents, putting our money towards things that we believe in, so that we're casting our vote, so to speak, in that sense. She also talks about big flavor. again, we're catering to the tongue, like all these different flavorings that they use, the idea of like natural flavors and really what that is, what that means. MSG, monosodium glutamate, the effects that these have on our bodies, but the effects they have on our tongue and our dopamine and our like neurotransmitters associated with pleasure and enjoyment and therefore potential for addiction. And she also talks about the United States in particular and how it's like there's McDonald's all around the world. But in America, they make some of their products using ingredients that they cannot legally use in other countries, so they don't. So in England, so to speak, like their French fries, they make them with real salt or something like that. I forget the exact scenario. Like I said, I wasn't going to get into like all the nitty-gritty exact scenarios because I'm like a generalist. I think it's important if you get the general idea of something. I don't see the value of trying to memorize like every single detail of some study, but this is just an example. And there's other examples, different types of colorings they use in different countries where it's illegal in a certain country, but in America it's not illegal, so they use it. They use the lower quality, cheaper ingredient, which has been literally made illegal in other countries because of the dangers that it's been proven to pose to people's health. Basically, it's not food. A lot of this stuff isn't food, you guys. It's like lab chemically derived things to have different effects. Sometimes it's like to make things smoother, like propylene glycol. Sometimes it's to make something, keep it from sticking, like the cellulose they put in Parmesan cheese. It's not all like for flavor, but a lot of it is also geared towards flavor as well. Some of the stuff really isn't food. And that's what the overarching biggest takeaway I took from this book is, and the number one thing I would suggest that you start to incorporate into your life is looking at the ingredients. The ingredients are so much more important than calories or nutrition facts. What is in the food? Look at your own recipes, and when you're cooking, you know what's going in. You know the ingredients. You're putting everything in one at a time into your recipe, so you know exactly what's in that. Well, you don't get that at a restaurant. You really don't know what ingredients they're using, what they're putting in there. And when you're going out to the grocery store, a lot of us are just grabbing things out of habit that we've just been eating for a long time, and we just don't even think about what the ingredients really are. So that's your homework. Go look through your cabinets right now. Look at the ingredients of some of the foods that you eat the most. As you're grocery shopping, as you're starting to replace your groceries, take a look at the ingredients, pause, look at other options. Is there something that's actually real food that I can use as an alternative to this junk that's not even real food that I've been shoving into my body for years and may very well be connected to my diabetes or my pain or my obesity, etc., etc., etc. So many things that are linked, so many health downfalls to so much of this food, and it's cheap and it's easy and we just don't even think about it. So that's what I want to challenge you to do, is think about it. Read those ingredients, see what's in your food, and only buy real food. Only buy things that are real whole ingredients. Look, make sure you know what it is. If you can't pronounce it, you probably shouldn't be putting it in your mouth. If you have no idea what it is, we all have these phones. We have like this extra layer of our brains. We can just look it up. Oh, what's that? You can stand there in the grocery store, make sure people can get by you and look up, what is this dihydroxymethazone 5? What is this? What is this derived from? Like, where do they get this ingredient from? How is it made? And that's the 3 questions that she says this can change the way that you consume food. And the 3 questions are, number 1, what are the ingredients? We covered that. Number 2, are these ingredients nutritious? Now, keep in mind, sometimes you might say no, and you still want to eat it. But it's about being mindful, right? So maybe, okay, well, at least it's real food. It's ice cream, it's like a fruit cake. And it's got some good ingredients in there, but it's still like maybe a little bit high on sugar. It's not maybe the most nutritious thing, but you are at least asking yourself that. You want to eat predominantly nutritious, real foods that are going to fuel your body and give you energy and give you longevity. Because although we will all die someday, we're not trying to rush the process unintentionally, right? And number 3, where do these ingredients come from? And this is very important when we start what we'll talk about on probably my next book review, which is animals, and like, how are the animals treated and how are these ingredients sourced, and do I feel comfortable and okay with what has to go down in order to get this food into my body? Do I feel good about what I'm putting into my body, and do I feel good about how I got it and how it got to me and where it came from? You know? Okay, daily sub sounds good. That sounds good. So I think that was, she also does, there's one more thing. Yeah, I covered pretty much everything. She talks specifically about the effects of glyphosate buildup on our bodies and how many foods it's in. And this is like the residue from Roundup, which is one of the most common fertilizers. And I think it's also an herbicide. It's like weed killer. It's intended to kill weeds. This is a poison for plants. The intention is to kill something. So you don't really want to be consuming things that are intended to kill things, generally speaking. Like if there's a poison, maybe don't eat it if you don't want to die, or speed up that process towards death, which I don't think most of us want to do. Hopefully not. And if you're in that space dealing with mental health struggles, that's a different subject entirely. And I encourage you to get help and reach out to someone and know that it gets better. Things change. It's temporary. I used to feel that way myself, and it really, like, you just have to get through it. It's like, that's okay, but that's a different. Generally speaking, most of us want to continue to live and are not trying to intentionally shove poison down our own throats, right? So look at your ingredients. Look at your ingredients over the calories, over the serving size and the sodium and all these things. Look at the ingredients first. And really see, like, what is this? What am I putting into my body? And pick the alternatives that are going to work best for you. And buy organic. Organic is a great way to avoid the genetically modified foods, which, wherever you stand on genetic modification, fine by me. But the idea behind genetically modified foods is almost always to increase the amount of chemicals that can be used. It's chemical resistance. The plants are resistant to these poison chemicals so that they can spray the heck out of them and not kill the crops. So they have to modify the crop's genes because normally that would completely kill them. And then we eat that. So maybe we should rethink some of these options that we're making with our bodies. Let's just keep learning and keep getting better together. I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's book review of Feeding You Lies, How to Unravel the Food Industry's Playbook and Reclaim Your Health by Vani. And I hope to see you guys on Twitch. I'm going to go do some Twitch gaming tonight. I'm going to be streaming a bunch these next couple of days because then my mom is here for a week. So I had a visitor last week, and then I had the week before that, I had a visitor here for 5 days, and then my mom's going to be here in a couple days, and she's going to be here for a week. So I am hosting like crazy this month of March, and I'm really enjoying making the podcast, but I didn't get to make one this last couple days ago, so I'm a little behind on that, but I'm just prioritizing live streaming because this is the thing that I've always loved and done all these years. So the podcast, we're everything in due time. Also the book that I've been writing for a long time and not working on very frequently. I love you. Thanks for being patient with me. And remember that you are worthy of being loved and feeling comfortable in your own skin. I'll see you guys on Twitch for some gaming tonight instead of doing all those other things that are very important. But I just miss you guys, okay? I had a company for a week. I haven't been able to game and hang with you guys like I like to in a while. So, sue me, but I'll be streaming on Twitch tonight instead of recording a new podcast episode. Maybe we'll do both. Probably not. I love you. Bye. Expreme DM, squeeze the day. This has been a moment in time with Nex. My username is the same pretty much everywhere. NexJuice. NexJuice. Yeah, like that. Okay.